Ever wonder why some of Hollywood's most iconic films vanished from theaters overnight? In the shadow of censorship, masterpieces were locked away for daring to hint at same-gender romance. One groundbreaking film was destroyed so thoroughly that only a single copy survived, hidden in a closet for 40 years. Grab your popcorn as we uncover 15 classic films that censors couldn't handle. Different from the Others, 1919. Different from the Others wasn't just banned, it was hunted down and destroyed by Nazi forces with such vigor that only one fragmented copy survived, secretly preserved in a Ukrainian closet for decades. This silent German film starring Konrad Veidt was the world's first pro-gay movie, created to fight against paragraph 175, the German law criminalizing homosexuality. Director Richard Oswald collaborated with Magnus Hirschfeld, a pioneering sexologist whose research institute was later burned by Nazis. The film boldly depicted a famous violinist blackmailed for his orientation and included an unprecedented happy ending, showing a future where gay people could live openly. Initially screened to packed houses in Berlin, it was restricted to medical professionals after just 1 year of release. When fragments were finally rediscovered in the 1970s, film historians called it the missing link of queer cinema. What makes this film truly revolutionary was its message directly to viewers. You are not sick, you are not criminal, you are not alone. Over a century later, the surviving 50 minutes still pack more courage than many modern films, showing how far ahead of its time it truly was. Rope, 1948. Alfred Hitchcock's Rope pulled off the impossible smuggling a gay relationship past Hollywood's moral watchdogs by hiding it in plain sight. Based on the Leopold and Loeb murder case, Hitchcock filmed this thriller in 10-minute continuous takes to create the illusion of one unbroken shot, but the technical wizardry was just a distraction from the film's true daring. The two murderers, played by John Dahl and Farley Granger, himself bisexual, were clearly portrayed as a couple without ever saying so explicitly. Their mentor, played by James Stewart, delivers the film's most loaded line when he tells them they're tied together in equality by their shared dark secret. The censors missed it entirely, but audiences didn't. Rope was banned in several cities and withdrawn from circulation for decades. Film scholar Robin Wood later called it Hitchcock's most explicitly gay film, noting how the director used the constraints of the Hays Code to create tension through what couldn't be shown. Today, it's studied as a masterclass in subtext and visual coding, turning censorship itself into a storytelling device. The real brilliance? Making viewers complicit by forcing them to fill in the blanks the censors created. Girls in Uniform, Mädchen in Uniform, 1931. Girls in Uniform survived 3 different attempts to erase it from history. This revolutionary German film about a schoolgirl falling in love with her female teacher was first targeted by Nazis who destroyed most copies. Then American censors blocked it from U.S. screens, and finally Cold War politics kept it buried in East Germany. Yet somehow, this cinematic phoenix refused to die. Director Leontine Sagan created something extraordinary, a film with an entirely female cast that openly challenged patriarchal power while portraying lesbian desire with startling tenderness. The boarding school setting becomes a metaphor for fascism, with the headmistress demanding girls sacrifice individuality, while the teacher, Fräulein von Bernberg, dares to show compassion and affection. When Eleanor Roosevelt personally intervened to allow a heavily cut American screening, the film still caused a sensation. Critic Pauline Kael called it the first film to present women's emotional relationships without apology or deviance. Most revolutionary was its ending change from the original play's suicide to one of solidarity, where the girls unite to save their friend. This transformation from tragedy to resistance made it not just a landmark of queer cinema, but of feminist filmmaking, proving that even under threat of censorship, art could imagine new possibilities. The Children's Hour, 1961. The Children's Hour took Broadway's most controversial play and turned it into Hollywood's most uncomfortable conversation. Based on Lillian Hellman's groundbreaking work, this film, starring Audrey Hepburn and Shirley MacLaine, tells the story of 2 women whose lives are destroyed when a troublemaking student accuses them of being lovers. What's shocking isn't just the topic, it's how director William Wyler was forced to remake his own film. 25 years earlier, Wyler had adapted the same play as these three, completely removing the lesbian content. This time he kept it, though the word lesbian is never uttered. The result? The film was banned in numerous countries and couldn't be shown on American television until the 1990s. MacLaine later revealed she and Wyler never even discussed her character's orientation during filming. That's how taboo the subject remained. Film historian Vito Russo noted the tragic irony. In both versions, innocent women are destroyed by the suggestion of lesbianism, as if the accusation alone, true or false, was enough to ruin lives. The film's most heartbreaking moment comes when MacLaine's character finally acknowledges her feelings, only to immediately hang herself, reflecting Hollywood's insistence that queerness could only end in punishment. Yet despite its dated elements, the film cracked open a door that would never fully close again. Victim, 1961. Victim didn't just challenge censors, it changed British law. This groundbreaking thriller starring Dirk Bogarde was the first English-language film to use the word homosexual and deliberately set out to decriminalize being gay in the UK. Bogarde, a closeted star at the height of his matinee idol fame, risked everything to play a successful lawyer blackmailed over his attraction to men. The British Board of Film Censors initially demanded 29 cuts, calling the subject immoral. American censors rejected it entirely. Bogarde's own studio begged him not to take the role, warning it would destroy his career. He did it anyway, later calling it the wisest decision I ever made professionally. The film's impact was seismic. Its unflinching portrayal of black male victims from all social classes, portrayed with dignity rather than stereotype, became a powerful argument for legal reform. 6 years later, Parliament partially decriminalized homosexuality, with politicians directly referencing the film in debates. Critic Roger Ebert called it not just a social document but a fascinating thriller and a deeply compassionate human drama. Perhaps most remarkably, this film about injustice was released the same year as The Children's Hour. But while Hollywood required punishment for its characters, British cinema dared to imagine change was possible. Sunday Bloody Sunday, 1971. Sunday Bloody Sunday obliterated boundaries by treating its bisexual love triangle with such matter-of-fact normalcy that audiences didn't know how to react. Director John Schlesinger's follow-up to Midnight Cowboy featured Peter Finch and Glenda Jackson sharing a male lover. Murray Head without melodrama or moralizing, just adults navigating complicated feelings with remarkable honesty. The film's most revolutionary scene showed Finch and Head kissing fully on the lips, cinema's first romantic gay kiss in a mainstream film. When test audiences walked out in disgust, the studio panicked, but Schlesinger refused to cut it. Multiple countries banned the film outright, while others demanded extensive edits. In America, the film received an X rating despite containing no explicit content whatsoever. Critic Pauline Kael called it the most sophisticated, most civilized movie about the complexity of personal relationships to come out of any country in years. The film earned 4 Oscar nominations, including Best Director and Actor, forcing Hollywood to acknowledge what many theaters wouldn't even screen. Finch later said, "I received hate mail by the sackful, but also letters from gay men saying the role gave them hope." The film's greatest achievement was treating homosexuality as neither sin nor social problem, but simply as one aspect of human experience, a radical act that made censors more uncomfortable than any explicit content could have. Desert Hearts, 1985. Desert Hearts didn't just break the lesbian death rule, it shattered it with the most explicit love scene between women ever filmed in mainstream American cinema. Director Donna Deitch mortgaged her house and spent years raising money to adapt Jane Rule's novel because every studio refused to finance a lesbian romance with a happy ending. The result became the unlikely film that censors couldn't kill. Set in 1959 Reno, the film follows an English professor seeking a divorce who falls for a free-spirited younger woman. Their chemistry builds to a 6-minute love scene so intimate and authentic that numerous countries banned the film outright. In America, the MPAA threatened an X rating until Deitch fought back, eventually securing an R but losing theatrical distribution in conservative states. Film Scholar B. Ruby Rich called it the first truly mainstream lesbian film, noting how it defied every convention by refusing to punish its characters or treat their love as deviant. While conservative critics dismissed it as propaganda, audiences voted with their wallets, turning this indie film into one of the highest-grossing limited releases of the year. Most revolutionary was its joyful ending, the first time mainstream audiences saw two women choose each other without tragedy, disease, or conversion. As one viewer wrote to Deitch, "I drove 300 miles to see women kiss on screen and not die afterward." Sebastianne, 1976. Sebastianne wasn't just banned, it was prosecuted. Derek Jarman's radical reimagining of Saint Sebastian's martyrdom was the first film in history shot entirely in Latin, but that scholarly achievement couldn't distract censors from its unprecedented male nudity and explicit homoerotic imagery. This art film about Roman soldiers turning desire into torture pushed boundaries so far that obscenity charges followed it across continents. The film reimagines the Christian saint as a Roman soldier whose rejection of his commander's advances leads to his famous execution by arrows. Jarman shot the film in Sardinia with a tiny budget, using non-professional actors and natural sunlight to create images of shattering beauty amid brutal content. The BBFC demanded extensive cuts, but eventually passed a censored version, while numerous countries banned it outright. In Australia, the film was seized by customs and subjected to a landmark obscenity trial. Film critic Tony Raines called it the most overtly and unashamedly gay British film ever made, noting how Jarman deliberately used religious iconography to challenge centuries of repression. By reclaiming Saint Sebastian, long a coded gay icon in art history, Jarman turned Catholic martyrdom into queer liberation. The film's greatest provocation wasn't its nudity, but its insistence that Christianity's own imagery contained homoerotic elements that had been systematically denied. This theological challenge proved more threatening to censors than any explicit scene. The Killing of Sister George, 1968. The Killing of Sister George earned an X rating not for violence or nudity, but for a single scene of tenderness between women. Robert Aldrich's adaptation of Sympathy, Frank Marcus's play, starred Beryl Reid as an aging soap opera actress whose younger lover, Susanna York, is drawn away by a predatory television executive. The film's climactic love scene between York and Coral Brown was so unprecedented that British censors demanded it be shot on a closed set. The finished scene, just under 4 minutes long, remains one of the most controversial in cinema history. Though tame by modern standards, it showed genuine intimacy rather than exploitation, causing the film to be banned throughout much of the world. American censors gave it an X rating, effectively killing its commercial prospects. The studio eventually cut two versions, the original for sophisticated urban markets and a heavily censored one for everywhere else. Critic Molly Haskell noted the film's uncomfortable contradiction. It gave us the first real lesbian relationship on screen, but framed it as something monstrous. Despite its problematic elements, Sister George became a touchstone for lesbian viewers starved for representation. York later revealed she was desperately unhappy filming the love scene, but understood its historical importance. The ultimate irony? This film about an actress losing her role became infamous for York's career-defining performance, one that would have destroyed her career had audiences actually been allowed to see it. Midnight Cowboy, 1969. Midnight Cowboy remains the only X-rated film ever to win Best Picture, a paradox that exposed Hollywood's hypocrisy about queerness. John Schlesinger's gritty masterpiece about the unlikely friendship between a naive hustler, Jon Voight, and a sickly con man, Dustin Hoffman, was branded too obscene for mainstream audiences, not for its violence or language, but for its unflinching portrayal of same-gender desire. The film's homosexual content appears mostly through implication and brief encounters, a closeted client, a psychedelic party scene, and the ambiguous relationship at its center. Schlesinger, himself gay but not publicly out, fought censors who wanted these elements removed. The MPAA slapped the film with an X rating, while numerous theaters refused to show it and entire states banned it outright. Despite these barriers, the film became a cultural phenomenon and critical darling. 3 years later, the MPAA mysteriously reclassified it as R without a single frame being altered, an admission that its content was never actually pornographic. Film historian Vito Russo argued this reversal revealed the true nature of film censorship. It was never about protecting audiences from obscenity, but about controlling which stories could be told. The ultimate irony? This film, considered too depraved for America, became the one Hollywood honored as its finest achievement, proving art could transcend the very barriers created to suppress it. Tea and Sympathy, 1956. Tea and Sympathy had to be neutered by its own playwright before Hollywood would touch it. Robert Anderson's Broadway sensation about a sensitive boy bullied for being different and the lonely faculty wife who comes to his aid was revolutionary on stage but systematically defanged for the screen. MGM forced Anderson to add a moralizing prologue, epilogue, and a condemnation of the central relationship that didn't exist in his original work. Despite these compromises, the film still faced censorship. The Production Code Administration demanded 2 script changes, including removing any hint that John Kerr's character, Tom, might be gay, despite that being the entire point of the narrative. The resulting film speaks in elaborate codes. Tom likes folk music and doesn't play sports, while other characters whisper about him being a sister boy without explanation. What makes the film remarkable despite these constraints is how Deborah Kerr and John Kerr, no relation, convey everything the script couldn't say. The film's famous closing line, years from now, when you talk about this, and you will be kind, takes on deeper meaning knowing what was deleted. Film historian Robert Hoffler noted, the censored film accidentally became more subversive than if they'd been explicit, because viewers had to actively participate in understanding what was really happening. The ultimate irony? This story about masculine conformity was itself forced to conform to Hollywood's narrow definition of acceptable storytelling. The Fox, 1967. The Fox sparked theater walkouts and public protests for daring to adapt D.H. Lawrence's novella about 2 women whose isolated farm life is disrupted by a male intruder. Director Mark Rydell's film starred Sandy Dennis and Anne Haywood as women sharing an ambiguous relationship that becomes explicitly romantic before a man, Keir Dullea, arrives to claim one of them. Its unprecedented portrayal of female desire led to bans in multiple countries. The film contains the first extended love scene between women in a Hollywood production, shot with the same lighting and care traditionally reserved for heterosexual couples. This artistic choice alone caused the Legion of Decency to condemn the film and theater chains across America to refuse bookings. Even in progressive cities, audiences sometimes rioted, throwing concessions at the screen during intimate scenes. Critic Rex Reed called it the first Hollywood film to deal honestly with lesbianism, while feminist critics condemned its implications that women needed male intervention. The censorship battles revealed a double standard. The film's lesbian content faced more restrictions than its violent ending, suggesting female desire was considered more dangerous than physical harm. While dated in many respects, The Fox represented a crucial step in cinema's evolution, proving that mainstream audiences would watch complex portrayals of women's lives and relationships despite institutional barriers designed to prevent exactly such stories. Personal Best, 1982. Personal Best literally made censors sweat. Robert Towne's groundbreaking film about female Olympic athletes engaged in both competition and romance was marketed as a sports drama, allowing it to sneak unprecedented intimacy between women into mainstream theaters. Starring Marielle Hemingway and real-life track star Patrice Donnelly, the film contains the most authentic athletic training sequences ever filmed alongside tender love scenes that caused international controversy. Shot during the 1980 Olympic trials with actual athletes performing their own stunts, the film's verisimilitude extended to its romantic content, portraying the women's relationship as a natural extension of their athletic partnership rather than exploitation. The MPAA initially threatened an X rating until Towne agreed to minimal cuts, while numerous countries banned it entirely or removed all romantic content, reducing it to a conventional sports film. Hemingway later revealed she almost lost her career over the role, with studios refusing to cast her afterward. Sports Illustrated called it the most honest film about competitive athletics ever made, while feminist critics were divided, some praising its naturalistic approach to female bodies, others critiquing its male gaze. The film's most subversive quality was treating bisexuality as unremarkable when Hemingway's character later becomes involved with a man. Her previous relationship is never disavowed or treated as a phase, challenging the binary thinking that dominated both Hollywood and society. Despite financial struggles, it pioneered a new language for depicting female athletes as complex, sexual beings rather than stereotypes. A Taste of Honey, 1961. A Taste of Honey shocked British audiences by treating a gay character with compassion rather than condemnation. Tony Richardson's kitchen sink drama, adapted from Sheila Delaney's play written when she was just 18, follows working-class teenager Jo Rita Tushingham, who becomes pregnant by a black sailor and finds support from a gay art student named Jeffrey Murray Melvin. Their makeshift family arrangement was so controversial that censors on both sides of the Atlantic demanded significant changes. The British Board of Film Censors initially refused certification until Richardson fought back, eventually winning approval with minor dialogue cuts. American censors demanded more substantial changes, particularly regarding Jeffrey's orientation, but Richardson cleverly used coded language and visual cues to preserve the character's essence. Despite these hurdles, the film won 4 BAFTA awards and the Cannes Film Festival Prize for both Tushingham and Melvin. Film critic Pauline Kael called it revolutionary in its demonstration that working-class life could be portrayed with intelligence and artistic integrity. What made the film truly progressive wasn't just Jeffrey's character, but how it rejected the notion that biological family was superior to chosen family. In an era when homosexuality was still criminalized in Britain, showing a gay man as the most decent and supportive character was a radical act of resistance. Richardson later revealed his personal stake in the fight as a bisexual man. Directing a film about outsiders finding connection, he was telling his own story through Delaney's groundbreaking work. 15. Cruising, 1980. Cruising ignited the most violent protests in film history months before shooting even began. William Friedkin's controversial thriller, starring Al Pacino as an undercover cop infiltrating New York's leather bars to catch a killer targeting gay men, faced unprecedented opposition. Thousands of demonstrators disrupted filming, blasting air horns to ruin audio and pointing mirrors at cameras to destroy footage, while debate raged about whether the film should exist at all. Production became so dangerous that Pacino needed constant security. Scenes were shot with hidden cameras, and locations were kept secret from most of the crew. When finished, the MPAA demanded Friedkin cut 40 minutes of footage they deemed too explicit material that remains lost to this day. Despite these cuts, many theaters refused to screen it, cities attempted to block its release, and critics savaged it as dangerous and exploitative. The film's complex legacy continues decades later. Initially condemned by GLAAD as harmful, it has been re-evaluated by scholars like Robin Wood, who called it the most extreme example of Hollywood attempting to confront homosexuality and revealing its inability to do so. While problematic in many aspects, the film captured a specific moment in gay history just before the AIDS crisis would decimate the community it portrayed. James Franco's 2013 film, Interior, Leather Bar, attempted to recreate the lost 40 minutes, demonstrating how even cruising's failures continue to provoke important conversations about representation, power, and who gets to tell which stories. These films didn't just challenge censors, they changed what was possible in cinema. From silent German masterpieces to controversial Hollywood productions, each pushed boundaries that made space for authentic stories to follow. Which of these forgotten classics surprised you most? Do you believe Hollywood has truly evolved, or are we just seeing new forms of the same old censorship? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because the conversation these pioneering filmmakers started isn't finished yet.